In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the flight crew in your private jet, but in particular your co-pilot. And maybe co-pilot is not the right term, but we're going to talk about qualifications, the importance of the co-pilot, because very often we're always talking about the captain. And again, you may be a pilot owner yourself, and we're going to be talking about bringing a co-pilot along to fly with you, and what type of qualification that person needs to have, and that and experience level, and how you should be using this person as a crew. So, if you haven't subscribed to BizJet TV, welcome to the channel for the first time. If this is your first time, my name is Fabrizio Poli, I'm your host and aviation advisor. So, have a comment below after the video. We like to hear your recommendations and suggestions and comments. And also subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, which helps the algorithm let everybody know about BizJet TV. But anyway, let's get into today's episode, all about the importance of your co-pilot on your private jet. Now, first of all, a lot of airplanes operate with two pilots. Now, there are a number of aircraft which can be operated as a single pilot. A lot of the turboprops are flown single pilot. The King Airs, the PC-12s, the TBM 940s. They can be operated as single pilot. Some of the jets, from the Honda jet to the Embraer Phenom 100, 300, and the various citations CJ 1, 2, 3, 4. All these aircraft can be operated by one pilot only. But it's always, as I like to say, it's always best to bring along another pilot to act as your co-pilot. Even though co-pilot is not the right word, it's almost like he's a co-pilot, he's not a real pilot. I like to use the word first officer. Or, as they use today, we've got the pilot monitoring and the pilot flying. One pilot does the flying, the other monitors. The pilot monitoring will usually do the radios, read the checklists, and point things out if to the pilot flying, get the weather and all that kind of thing. And you work together as a crew. Now, flying an airplane on your own is very different to flying an airplane with somebody else. And if you're going to have that somebody else, you need to use them in the best possible way. So if you're buying a private jet and you're needing to hire crew, of course, there's a lot of focus on the captain, but also there needs to be focus on the first officer. Now, in the United States, for example, when you go for what's called a type rating, there are two type ratings for the, there's one type rating for the captain and one type rating for the first officer, called SIC, or second in command type rating. In Europe, we do it differently. The rating is the same for both. So both pilots, both the captain and the first officer, will go through exactly the same training, exactly the same test, tested to exactly the same standards. And they both have to pass to that level. Now, I'm a bit critical of the system in the US, where they've got this second in command course, which is a shorter course, the pilot in command course, because I still think that, the guy that's sitting in the right-hand seat, the second in command, needs to be able to take over if necessary. So their level of training should be the same level. So, message to those of you buying a private jet, and you have to type rate your pilots, type rate both the captain and the first officer, give them the full type rating. Don't go for the cheaper option for the co-pilot or the first officer by going for the second in command rating. So that's the first thing. So the training, my view, both need to go for the full type rating. Now, the first officer there needs to have a certain level of experience. The captain needs to be humble enough to listen to the first officer, even if the first officer is less experienced. Usually the captain has more experience than the first officer, but it does happen. It's happened to me flying as a first officer. I have flown with people with less experience than me as captains, and it can get a bit tricky sometimes, especially when you see things that they don't see, to point them out. But going back to your co-pilot, your first officer, it's someone there that's there in that right-hand seat. Use them as much as possible. Learn to work as a crew. There are courses, jet orientation or multi-crew coordination courses that you can do where you can learn to fly as a crew. So this is a shout out there for the pilot owners. Flying with somebody else is different to flying on your own, and having another set of eyes sitting next to you, extra pair of hands to read the checklist and get the weather and do the radios for you, especially in a tricky situation or an emergency situation, is certainly of great benefit. But the co-pilot is important. Your job as a first officer, as a co-pilot, is to monitor the captain when he or she is flying, point out anything, if they're going slow, high, low, whatever it may be, point that out. Of course, when you brief, include the first officer, or if you're the first officer and you're doing the flying, include the captain. Work as a team. But as a captain, and flying as a captain, it's important for me to make the first officer feel that, you know, they are part of a crew, that we are a team, and if I am doing something wrong or I'm missing on something, that they can speak up and point things out. So it's important for the captain to be humble enough and to transmit that way of being to the first officer. The first officer knows that, you know, the captain's not Mr. Perfect. Captains do make mistakes at times, and the first officer is there to help. This is very much a crew, and, you know, if the landing is a bad landing, it's not the pilot flying's fault, it's the crew's fault. And that's really the way to look at it. So, you know, if I'm doing the flying, the co-pilot or the pilot monitoring is there to help me to do a really, really good landing. And that doesn't mean, you know, keep talking to the other person, because, you know, people are focused and concentrated, you know, but, you know, if there's any parameters going out of whack or whatever, then you would obviously speak up, make the call outs. This is where standard operating procedures are important to come in place. And these are all things that, you know, you need to incorporate in the operation of your private jet. So if you're hiring a captain and you need to hire a first officer, make sure that that first officer is fully type rated, or type rate them on the airplane. Make sure the captain's a sort of captain that, you know, likes to work as a team, and not one of these authoritarian captains, which I've flown with in my career at times, where, you know, the first officer is just there to do the radios and put the landing gear down and up, and that's it, and they won't listen to you. It's very, very important that you hire a captain that's open to working with the first officer, that allows the first officer to do some of the flying as well, because some captains on private jets will not let the first officer fly. But what happens if the captain has a heart attack? Now the first officer needs to land the plane. He's not got the experience or the confidence to do that. And so again, that's important. What I would do is what we do in the airlines. We fly one sector each. So if you're flying from, I don't know, London to Milan, the captain would fly out on the way there, and the first officer would fly on the way back. That gives both the opportunity to act as pilot flying and pilot monitoring. These are all things which are important. But anyway, if you want to have a chat with me about hiring the right crew, you just ping me an email. We'll get onto a Zoom call, and I can help you hire crew. I can help you interview and locate the right candidates for your airplane. That's another thing that we can do here for you. And yeah, and check this other video we did recently about how ice killed a pilot, and icing can be dangerous. Check this video out, and subscribe to BizJet TV, and that's Open Fabrizio Poli on BizJet TV, and I'll see you on the next one.